Hello and welcome to the Daily Bell Ringer. Please make sure to subscribe and check out the questions down in the description. Today we're going to be taking a look at Article 5, which deals with amending the Constitution. All right, so Article 5, adding an amendment to the Constitution. So before we even jump into, the procedure of what the Founding Fathers laid out, we need to kind of look at, what is the difference between a law and an amendment, or really, what is an amendment? So if we look here, this is how I always describe a law versus an amendment. If you look on the left, you of course can see, a stream of water. A law is kind of like a stream of water in a way. Water can be changed in course. If I were to throw a rock or a log into the middle of the stream, it could change the course. All right. So laws can be changed, not easily, but relatively easily. Whereas if you look on the right, an amendment is kind of like, concrete. Like if I put in a concrete sidewalk, it's going to take a lot of work for me to be able to change the course of that sidewalk. All right. And if you look at the bottom, of course, I have the example that, an amendment to the Constitution can kind of be a dam to water and control the water, all right, or stop the water. So, for instance, let's say, someone were to say all of a sudden that women should no longer be able to vote, which of course would be a terrible, terrible, awful thing. But if they tried to propose a law to do that, we have an amendment to the Constitution that says, no, this is, women have the right to vote. And so that amendment would block that law. All right. So an amendment is much more difficult to get passed, but it's also much more difficult to change. All right, you can't really change it once it's into the Constitution. All right, so again, amendments are changes to the Constitution, and they're very, very solid, very concrete things that are decided. All right, and not to say that amendments have not been changed in the past, but it's a difficult process. So that's why it's a difficult process to get it added, because it's so concrete and so never changing. So, like, for instance, again, the 13th Amendment, though, the amendment that outlawed slavery, it's a solid thing that, is never going to be changed. All right. I mean, thank goodness it'll never be changed. And so to get an amendment to the Constitution, there's a procedure here that the Founding Fathers laid out. And remember, the Constitution's only been amended 27 times. And honestly, if you think about it, it's really only been 17, because the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, known as the Bill of Rights, were all adopted at the same time. But since then, we've only had 17 times really that it's been, really changed since the Bill of Rights were added. Okay, so the procedure for doing this: an amendment has to pass both houses of Congress with a supermajority, or 2/3 vote, in order to be considered. All right, so the amendment has to pass with a 2/3 majority. Once it passes with that 2/3 majority of Congress, then it's sent out to the states. All right, and within the states, the state legislatures, 3/4 of the states have to approve of that amendment. So it's kind of interesting here, because you have this system where the federal government is introducing the amendment, and then the states are actually approving the amendment. All right, so there's this relationship where it's federal governments and states. And notice here, the president plays no role whatsoever in this amendment process. It's all the legislative branch, the Congress, and then the legislatures of each individual state. All right, so that's method number one. This is actually the only method that's ever actually been used in amending the Constitution. But this is a very difficult thing. If you think about it, getting a supermajority, 2/3 majority in Congress, that's really, really tough. Getting 3/4 of the states to agree on it, that's tough as well. So again, an amendment is very difficult to get. But the Founding Fathers kind of put this loophole in the Constitution that is another method that's actually never been used, but it's kind of interesting to look at here. This other method that's never been used is basically 2/3 of the states have to call for constitutional conventions where they want an amendment to be considered. All right. And then of these conventions, of these 2/3 of the states that call for a convention, 3/4 of those of the states' legislatures have to approve of the amendment. All right. And once all that's done, the amendment now is added to the U.S. Constitution. But if you notice here, there's no role of the federal government. All right, Congress is completely out of this. This is purely the states saying they want this amendment added to the Constitution, or this change to the Constitution, and the federal government can't say anything. It's just all on the states. So 2/3 of the states have to have constitutional conventions. Then once they decide what they want to do, and then 3/4 of the states have to approve that amendment. So those are the two different methods of amending the Constitution. So again, if you ever see that the Constitution is even being considered to be amended, pay attention, because it's a big deal, because it's something that doesn't happen every day, and it is a very concrete decision that's made. All right, so hopefully you learned something there. Thanks for watching.